everybody, for this video I'm going to try to keep the topic as simple as possible. We're going to talk about what is in this video in a way that anyone can understand what it is I'm talking about, even people who do not play League of Legends. So in order to do that, I'm going to explain every concept I go over in great detail. I think as I do my patch videos and as I do build videos and things like that, sometimes people don't really have like a base knowledge of the game, and sometimes I skip over the people that might be new to League or might not know that much about League to begin with. So in this video in particular, we're going to be going over concepts in good detail so that everyone can be on the same page. So what are we talking about in this video? We are going to be talking about why damage in League of Legends is so high right now. Why, compared to just a few weeks ago before the giant item update of Season 14, why is damage so high? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's items. The items in this game have become much burstier. How did they become much burstier? Because most of their gold value started to go into damage and stopped going into other things. So let's, just as a base look, let's go into items, okay? I'm going to look into Lichbane. Lichbane is an item. Lichbane gives 100 ability power. Lichbane gives 15 ability haste. Lichbane gives 8% movement speed. It gives a Spellblade passive. Items have gold value. Now gold value is when you add up all the gold value of the item and then you compare that to the cost of the item. So for example, Lichbane has 100 ability power, which is worth 2,000 gold. It has 15 ability haste, which is worth 750 gold. It has 8% movement speed, which is worth 431 gold. It is a total gold value in pure stats on this item of 3,181.6. Since the item is 3,100 gold to buy, this makes this item 102.63% gold efficient. Do you guys understand that? Okay, so every item has a gold value. Overall, Riot likes to keep the gold value of completed items around 100 to 120% gold efficient. Some items will be less than 100% gold efficient off very powerful passives that aren't counted, and some items will be more gold efficient off very powerful passives that are weak. Now what do I mean by that? Lichbane is a mere 102% gold efficient. That's because the Spellblade passive it has that adds damage to every time you use an ability, your next attack does massive magic damage, and it's on a 1.5 second cooldown. Because of this extremely powerful passive that is not counted into its gold value, this item needs to be less gold efficient or it will break the game. Other similar abilities, and to show you an example, let's look at Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver, on the other hand, is 133% gold efficient, because Black Cleaver's passive effects are quite weak. They are not very strong. And so because of that, Black Cleaver needs to be extremely more gold efficient. Now, to fill in people that don't play League of Legends, Lichbane is currently one of the most powerful items in the entire game. Black Cleaver is an item that people rarely buy, and yet Lichbane is 102% gold efficient and Black Cleaver is 133% gold efficient. That's because, again, Lichbane's Spellblade effect is extraordinarily powerful. Black Cleaver's Carve effect does not really do much anymore. So, despite being way more gold efficient, Black Cleaver tends to be the less built item. So what happened going into this new season? What happened to, I guess just generally items, what happened to items that made there be way more damage? Well, look no further than our good friend Spear of Sojin. Now, Spear of Sojin in the Season 14 update got many changes. The ones I'm going to be focusing on is that Spear of Sojin used to give 500 health. It now gives 300 health. Spear of Sojin used to give a lot of ability haste, and it used to give a lot of movement speed, and now instead it gives less ability haste, no movement speed, and more damage. Because of that, Spear of Sojin as an item deals more damage with less ability haste with less HP. In other words, Spear of Sojin is a much higher damage that gives you less survivability. Despite this, Spear of Sojin is still 120% gold efficient, even not factoring in the Dragon Force passive and the Focused Will passive. Okay, now let's try to explain what is going on with ability haste. Ability haste is a stat that Riot reduced in Season 14. In Season 14, Riot wanted to reduce ability haste across the board. To give you an example of an item that only gave ability haste, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, it used to give 20 ability haste and now it gives 15. And that was the only change that they did on this item. So, in other words, Riot reduced ability haste across the board. The more ability haste you have, the lower your cooldowns are. The calculation is, I write this in a notepad here so you guys can see it visually in front of you. Your ability haste is 100 minus 100 plus ability haste. In other words, if I have 20 ability haste, that's a divide, not okay. If I have 20 ability haste, it is 100 divided by 120, means that my abilities are now on 83.3% of their cooldown. Or in other words, their cooldown is reduced by about 17%. Do you guys understand that? The more ability haste you have, the less percent of your cooldown it is reduced, but in effect, ability haste is a linear concept. If you have 50 ability haste, you cast 50% faster. If you have 100 ability haste, you cast 100% faster. 100 ability haste is 50% cooldown reduction on your ability, so you cast at double the speed. Do you guys all understand that? Okay, so the problem is when Riot decided to reduce ability haste across the board, that meant that unfortunately the stats of items had to go somewhere, because Riot isn't just going to let all these items have less gold value. So what did they do? Let's use Black Cleaver as an example here. Black Cleaver used to give 30 ability haste. It now gives 20 ability haste. In return, it now gives 55 damage. That means the damage of Black Cleaver went up, but the ability haste went down. We now cast more abilities for less damage. We cast less abilities for more damage. There we go. It's in my brain. We cast less abilities now for more damage. Now, this has had an upside for certain people. Certain people like that there is less ability haste in the game, that abilities have more cooldowns. The unfortunate downside of this is now there is more damage in the game. Now, if we go by ability, if we go item by item, this has been pretty true, right? The more ability haste you have, or what's the right way to put it? The item by item, generally speaking, items have more damage. That's true with Spear Sojin, that's true with Black Cleaver. And then Riot went ahead and did really weird balancing decisions, I'm going to call it that, where on items like Lichbane, they went ahead and made the Spellblade effect deal more damage, and they made it get 15 more ability power. This has made Lichbane a better item that people enjoy building more often, but it has also made way more builds way burstier and with more damage. In addition to that, Riot has decided that many items in the game for different classes have been added with no ability haste that just add a lot of damage. Look no further than Storm Surge. Storm Surge is 82% gold efficient, but that's because it gives ability power, magic penetration, which increases your magic damage, and movement speed. It also has the Storm Raider passive that allows you to do a lot of damage whenever you activate Storm Raider. This means this item gives absolutely no ability haste, and worse yet, has a long cooldown on its damage effect, and is not very gold efficient, but in return, it just does a lot of damage. This has had the obvious side effect here that to no one's surprise, the amount of damage in this game is way higher than it used to be to compensate for the lack of ability haste. To give you guys more examples of this and how this has also happened, we can look at an item like Shadow Flame. Now, what happened to Shadow Flame? Some of you obviously know, and let's go through it. What happened to an item like Shadow Flame? Shadow Flame was giving, let's look at its patch notes here. It was giving 200 health and 100 ability power. It now gives 120 ability power, no health. Well, Shadow Flame, despite having some other changes, which I'm not going to go into, Shadow Flame now has the side effect where it gives a lot of ability power, which increases the damage of your abilities, but no health. So it now does more damage with less health. It is only 86% gold efficient, but that's, as you might suspect, because its passive allows you to deal a lot more damage. So once again, we have an item that used to give you health and damage, which now gives you only damage with a passive effect so powerful at giving you more damage that they made it less gold efficient. In other words, the problem here that Riot is facing with items right now is people are casting less abilities, but they're doing significantly more damage. And that is why there is so much damage in Season 14. That's honestly it. This is it. This is the only thing that is happening that is increasing damage by this much. There's nothing really else to talk about, unfortunately. There's just way more damage in the game, and there's less ability haste. So the thing is, when we look at time to kill from Riot will often compare time to kill. Yes, if you miss abilities, you can often find yourself with items that have no ability haste. So it will take you longer to get back to the ability. It will take you longer to get back to it in order to cast the ability again. So to some people, this is a good thing because now they can dodge abilities. But to some people, this is a bad thing. Because it means if you get hit by abilities, you tend to just instantly explode. The time to kill, I think on average, Ryder said the time to kill is about the same, but that's because if you average out the fights, if someone hits their abilities, you die from full. If someone misses their abilities, it takes them a way long time to get back into it. Between those two fights, they average out, and time to kill between those two fights is the same. I think you can understand that, right? So even though time to kill feels about the same, you can explode way harder and die. And in addition to that, Riot has gone through, if we look at another item here, I just want to show you one more item. Hybrid defensive items have gone down in power pretty considerably. Death Stance itself, for some reason, lost 5 armor. Death Stance already was kind of being, I'm not saying it's a bad item, but Death Stance was already on the back burner. Many people were already stopping to not build it anymore, and then it went ahead and lost 5 more armor. This is a side effect where a lot of people are no longer opting into building hybrid items that give damage and defense, and instead are opting primarily into builds that are pure damage. Riders have noticed that many people are building pure damage builds more often than before, because most people are building pure damage builds because hybrid items took a hit. Spear of Sojin lost 200 health. Death Stance lost 5 armor, because these hybrid builds of damage and defense that people could build are worse. People are just focusing on pure damage builds. And that's what's going on here. That's why damage is so high in Season 14, and that's it. It's not to say that items are stronger, because items, on average, as we've seen, are not stronger. Items like Storm Surge are wildly under gold efficient. Lichbane is only 102% gold efficient. We have items like Shadow Flame that are, once again, under gold efficient. And we have some items that, despite being very powerful, like, let's say, Spear of Sojin is a decently powerful item, but even items like Spear of Sojin had their item gold redirected from being a primarily health defensive item that gave movement speed into being a medium health item that just gives you way more damage. Okay, that's going to be this video. I hope you guys all understand this concept. Just to write this down so you can all understand it, okay? Damage on items went up. Ability haste on items went down. Survivability on hybrid items went down. These 3 concepts, in my opinion, are the biggest reason that damage in League of Legends feels higher. But again, to be clear to everyone, in case you don't understand it, this does mean if you do dodge abilities, you will tend to be more survivable than last season's because ability haste is, well, lower. It just also tends to happen that if you ever get attacked by a team or focused, that you tend to blow up. Tanks tend to be more survivable in this season, but the unfortunate downside of tanks, and let me show you this right here, tanks on average are not doing better. They do less damage. And as we look at this list here, let's look at the top line list right here. Tanks on average are not doing better. They do survive for a bit longer, but they deal less damage. On average, tanks, we have Kosante here at 3, Malphite at 10, Scion at 17 doing terrible, and Shen at 24 is still not really doing that great. You can see there's really not that many tanks. There's like 10% of the picks right now are tanks. Tanks have never really been that popular, but in the past they can maybe make up 20 to 30 to even 40% of the top lane picks, whereas due to tanks not really getting released anymore, tanks don't really get released as new champions, and many of the tanks that are in the game, such as Tom Kench or Cho'Gath or Poppy or Maokai, many of these champions tend to not really be super meta right now, so they're not really even being picked. And so because of that, despite tanks lasting longer, no one's really playing them to begin with. So thank you all for coming to this video. It's really just these three concepts. Damage on items went up, ability haste on items went down, survivability on hybrid items went down. And I'm going to put an addendum here. This does mean, by the way, I just want to clarify with this survivability. Survivability. Okay, I just want to put an addendum here. More full damage builds. Because survivability on hybrid items went down, that means more champions are doing full damage builds. That means instead of getting champions like, let's say, Jarvan, who are building Spear Sojin and Black Cleaver and have, you know, Gore Drinker and have like 1500 health and items, change shielding and healing and surviving for long periods of time, instead of having those champions in our game, we can look and we can see in the jungle, we have funny one-shot picks being picked primarily, like Graves, like Lee Sin, like Lilaya, like Brand, like Kha'Zix, like Viego, like Kayn, like Shin, like Nocturne. And some of these champions are a bit survivable, but even amongst the ones that can go Sundered Sky being the primarily defensive item, we can see even amongst these champions that, you know, Sundered Sky is making up 10% of the first picks, 55% of the second picks. So even Xin Chao only has like a half chance of going with a survivable build and a half chance of going with funny one-shot Titanic auto reset builds. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all for coming to my video. Thank you all for watching. I hope this explains it to everyone and everyone can understand it. So thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.